The Belmont Country Club outside Philadelphia was everything my sister Rebecca had dreamed of: manicured lawns, a Georgian-style mansion, and the kind of old-money atmosphere that came with membership waiting lists and unspoken dress codes. She'd been planning this wedding to Marcus Wellington III for 2 years, every detail calibrated to announce her arrival into Philadelphia's social elite. I sat in the 4th row watching guests arrive in their pastel dresses and seersucker suits. Old families with names you'd recognize from history books. Trust fund children who'd never worked a day but spoke authoritatively about building wealth. Rebecca had finally made it into the world she'd always coveted. "Why, you actually came." My mother appeared, her lavender dress carefully chosen to impress the Wellington family. She glanced at my simple navy sheath with barely concealed disappointment. "Oh, you wore that. It's appropriate for a formal wedding." "It's appropriate for a business meeting, dear. This is the social event of the season." She sighed. "Well, at least you're here. Though I wish you'd brought someone. Rebecca's friends all have successful partners." "I came alone, Mom." "Yes, I can see that." She adjusted her pearl necklace, the one she'd bought specifically for this wedding. "Rebecca seated you with some of Marcus's college friends. Nice young men. Maybe you'll meet someone." My sister Rebecca emerged from the country club, resplendent in her Monique Louillier gown, trailed by 6 bridesmaids in matching blush pink. Her maid of honor, Stephanie, carried the train with practiced reverence. Rebecca had chosen Stephanie carefully, beautiful, connected, and completely devoted to making Rebecca look good. "Paya." Rebecca air-kissed near my cheek. "I'm so glad you could take time away from whatever it is you do." She laughed, a sound like wind chimes. "Stephanie was just saying how impressive it is that you have a job at all, considering." "Considering what?" "You know, that you dropped out of Wharton." Rebecca lowered her voice conspiratorially. "Don't worry, I didn't tell the Wellingtons. They think you work in consulting or something respectable." Stephanie giggled. "We all can't marry well like Rebecca. Some of us have to work." They swept away toward the ceremony lawn, leaving me standing with my mother, who looked embarrassed. You know how Rebecca gets before big events. She's just nervous. The ceremony was beautiful. White roses everywhere, a string quartet, vows that sounded like they'd been written by a romance novelist. I sat in my assigned row, surrounded by Marcus's college fraternity brothers who spent the ceremony checking their phones and making quiet jokes about the open bar. The reception was even more elaborate. The country club's ballroom had been transformed into something from a fairy tale. Crystal chandeliers, gold chiavari chairs, centerpieces that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. I found my table assignment, number 9, far from the head table where immediate family sat. "Why-chin." One of the fraternity brothers read my place card with confusion. "Are you related to the bride?" "I'm her sister." "Oh." He exchanged glances with his friends. "Huh. We thought she only had, successful siblings." The dinner service began and I picked at salmon that had been flown in from Scotland while Marcus's friends discussed their trust funds and vacation homes. Then the lights dimmed for the reception program, a multimedia presentation Rebecca had spent months perfecting. The screen descended from the ceiling and the slideshow began. Baby photos of Rebecca, always perfectly posed. School pictures where she'd been homecoming queen, prom princess, everything their small Connecticut town had to offer. College graduation from Sarah Lawrence, where she'd majored in art history and minored in social climbing. Then came the family tribute section and I felt my stomach tighten. Photos of Rebecca with our parents, beaming. Rebecca with cousins at family weddings. Rebecca with friends who'd made something of themselves. A lawyer, a doctor, an investment banker. Then a photo appeared. Rebecca and me at our parents' house 5 years ago, Christmas morning. I was in an oversized sweater laughing at something off camera. Rebecca was perfectly styled, looking like she'd stepped out of a magazine. The narration began, Stephanie's voice, amplified through the ballroom speakers. "Rebecca Chin has always been a woman who reaches for the stars and achieves them," Stephanie announced. "Unlike some people, she never gave up on her dreams or settled for less than excellence." The room chuckled appreciatively. "Some sisters actually made something of themselves," Stephanie continued as another photo showed Rebecca receiving some society award. Rebecca never let family disappointments hold her back. She forged her own path to success, proving that determination and grace can overcome any obstacle. My face burned. Around me, Marcus's friends were nodding along, stealing glances at me like I was a museum exhibit labeled cautionary tale. The slideshow continued. Rebecca's engagement photos, her bridal shower, her bachelorette party in the Hamptons. Every image carefully curated to project success, sophistication, and superiority. Then something unexpected happened. The screen flickered. The carefully edited slideshow stuttered, and a different image appeared. One that definitely wasn't in Rebecca's approved presentation. It was a magazine cover. Forbes Asia from 2 months ago. The 30 Under 30 special issue. And there I was, front and center, under the headline, Maya Chin, the AI consultant revolutionizing Fortune 500 companies. The ballroom went silent. Someone in the AV booth was frantically trying to skip forward, but the presentation had frozen. For 20 excruciating seconds, my Forbes cover dominated the screen while 300 wedding guests stared at it in confused silence. I hadn't planned this, but I knew exactly who had. The AV company Rebecca hired, Prestige Events Media, was owned by Jonathan Torres, one of my former clients. I'd helped his company implement an AI system last year that tripled their operational efficiency and saved them from bankruptcy. When his team had recognized my name on Rebecca's vendor list, they'd apparently decided to enhance the presentation. The screen finally moved on to Rebecca and Marcus's engagement photos, but the damage was done. Phones were emerging from pockets and purses. People were Googling my name. The whispers started like wildfire spreading through dry grass. Stephanie had abandoned her prepared toast and was improvising badly from the microphone. Well, moving on to celebrate this beautiful couple. Let's hear from Marcus's father. But Marcus's father, Richard Wellington III, wasn't standing to give his planned speech. He was staring at his phone, his expression shifting from confusion to shock to something that looked like recognition. He stood up, microphone in hand, but instead of launching into his prepared remarks about family and tradition, he said, "Excuse me, is Maya Chin here tonight?" 300 pairs of eyes turned to find me. I raised my hand slightly, feeling like I was back in grade school. Richard's face broke into a huge smile. "Why, I didn't realize you were Rebecca's sister. Why didn't anyone mention this?" He turned to address the confused crowd. For those who don't know, Maya Chin is the reason Wellington Industries successfully completed our digital transformation last year. She's the AI consultant who saved our manufacturing division from obsolescence. The silence was deafening. Her work generated $200 million in operational savings, Richard continued, warming to his subject. I've been trying to book another consultation with her for months, but her schedule is impossible. She's working with half the Fortune 500. He laughed. When I saw her on that Forbes cover, I sent it to our entire board with a note. This is what real innovation looks like. Rebecca's face had gone from bridal glow to mortified crimson. Marcus looked between his father and his new wife, clearly trying to understand how this had happened. "Maya, would you come up here, please?" Richard insisted. "I'd like to properly acknowledge you. I didn't want to go. This wasn't about revenge. I'd stopped needing Rebecca's approval years ago. But something in Richard's genuine enthusiasm made me stand. As I walked through the tables toward the head table, I felt the weight of everyone's stares shift from pity to curiosity to dawning understanding. Stephanie had gone pale, still holding the microphone limply. When I reached the head table, Richard shook my hand warmly. "Ladies and gentlemen, this young woman is a pioneer in her field. She dropped out of Wharton because she'd already built a more successful consulting practice than most MBAs achieve in their entire careers. By 25, she was advising CEOs of multinational corporations. By 28, she'd opened offices in 5 countries." He turned to Rebecca, his tone still friendly but edged with confusion. "Rebecca, darling, why didn't you tell us your sister was the Maya Chin? Marcus and I were discussing last week trying to get her firm for our Singapore expansion." Rebecca's mouth opened soundlessly. My mother stood, her face showing shock and dawning horror. My father frantically scrolled his phone, probably reading the Forbes article for the first time. "I didn't know," Rebecca managed. "She never said." "Because you never asked," I said quietly, taking the microphone from Stephanie's trembling hands. "In 5 years, no one in this family asked what I actually do. You decided I was a failure when I left Wharton, and that was enough. The room went silent. I could hear ice melting in champagne buckets. I left my MBA program because I'd already secured 12 corporate clients willing to pay me more than any entry-level position would offer. I dropped out because staying would have meant turning down contracts worth millions. But none of you asked. You just assumed I'd failed. I looked at Stephanie, who just called me a family disappointment in front of 300 people. I'm happy for Rebecca. She's worked hard to marry into this family. But before you mock someone for not making something of themselves, check whether they've already built something you couldn't imagine. I handed the microphone to Richard. Congratulations to Rebecca and Marcus. I wish you both happiness. Marcus stood quickly. Maya, wait. Please don't go. My father talks about you constantly. I just never connected the names. I didn't realize you were Rebecca's sister. That's because Rebecca never mentioned me. I was the embarrassment she didn't want to explain. Rebecca was crying, mascara running down her face. But I couldn't feel sorry for her. This was a situation she'd created deliberately. You could have told us, my mother said, approaching with tears. Why didn't you tell us what you'd accomplished? I did, Mom. Repeatedly. I told you I was doing AI consulting. I mentioned international offices. You called it my little tech thing, and asked when I'd get a real job. You stopped listening because I didn't fit your definition of success. Richard cleared his throat awkwardly. Perhaps we should continue with the reception. This is Marcus and Rebecca's special day after all. I nodded and headed for the exit. Behind me, the party attempted to restart, but the energy had changed completely. Rebecca's wedding had become the event where everyone learned her failed sister was more successful than she'd ever be. My phone buzzed in the parking lot. A text from Jonathan Torres at Prestige Events Media. Sorry, not sorry about the slideshow malfunction. Your sister was rude to my team during planning. We thought she should know who you really are. I smiled and replied, thank you. Though I think the Forbes cover made its point. As I drove away, I thought about being called a family disappointment, about 5 years of dismissal because my success didn't look like what they expected. The Forbes cover hadn't been meant for them. I'd built my career separate from family validation because I'd learned their approval wasn't something I needed. But sometimes the truth reveals itself whether you plan for it or not. The slideshow malfunction had been Rebecca's reckoning. Now she'd spent her marriage explaining to the Wellingtons why she'd hidden and mocked a sister more successful than anyone at that country club. That wasn't my revenge. I hadn't orchestrated it. But I couldn't say I was sorry it happened. Some bridges burn completely, and no amount of retrospective recognition can rebuild them. My family had spent years deciding I wasn't worth their time. The Forbes cover was just the universe's way of correcting their mistake.